Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the How Did It Happen podcast. I am so happy to have you here as I am with every episode. And today I'm fulfilling my promise to you once again with an amazing success story. I've got 𝗧𝗘𝗫𝗧 on the podcast. Lisa, thank you so much for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Mike. Happy to be here.
So let me tell you about why you should be excited about Lisa as I am. So 𝗧𝗘𝗫𝗧 is the founder and chief creative officer of Fancy Sprinkles, the woman-owned and woman-run confectionery sprinkle company that launched in 2016 on a mission to reimagine the edible arts industry from mundane and basic to sexy and cool. Who even knew that reimagination would be out there? So I'm really looking forward to exploring that because I certainly didn't. As a mother of three girls, an entrepreneur, a Reiki healer, and a lifestyle personality, Lisa has given life to sprinkles that no one, even herself, and probably you, could have ever imagined. Her fun, colorful, edgy, and cool persona emulates throughout each of the brand's one-of-a-kind products that helps consumers unlock their creative potential. And this business started in 2016, as I mentioned, as a hobby to help Lisa with her postpartum anxiety and depression after giving birth to her second daughter, and has turned into an innovative and quickly growing company that in just 2 months exceeded her expectations, and since then has grown 100% year over year, which is amazing. Finally, Lisa is a model, a social media influencer, a trendsetter in all things pretty. I like that. And you can follow her on Instagram at 𝗧𝗘𝗫𝗧, 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗬𝗓𝗓. And her company is FancySprinkles.com. So Lisa, I start every show the same way. It's with a simple question. How did it happen for you?
Well, I would say the simplest answer to that is that it happened through a series of discoveries. And it also happened through learning a new hobby. And from there, realizing that there was a pretty big space and gap in the market for what I felt didn't exist yet. So I basically got into cake decorating and edible arts is what we'll call it, because it's not just baking. And I want to point that out specifically, is that a lot of people think, well, I don't bake, so I can't use sprinkles or any of the other things that you guys sell. And I'm very adamant that you don't have to be a baker, because I'm not really a baker. I'm more of a decorator. You summed it up in my bio, which is I like to make things pretty. I'm sort of a curator by that nature. So when I got into edible arts, I started cake decorating. Now, I wasn't like baking things from scratch, really. I was like using Betty Crocker cake mixes, and that's not the fun part for me. The fun part is decorating, because I've always done like artistic things, like I really love to do crafting and decorating, and I have like a million hobbies, makeup. So I kind of just applied that same interest to cake decorating. And when I watched all of these YouTube videos of these creators decorating these gorgeous cakes, like things I had never seen before in a grocery store, even like a lot of bakeries, I thought, wow, that looks fun. I can probably do that. And so I did a bunch of research, watched a bunch of videos, bought the tools I needed to decorate, and I decorated my first cake, and I became addicted instantly. It was like I got so much creative fulfillment out of this hobby. And it really felt like something that was mine that I could continue to do. And I got a lot of validation. A lot of people were like, wow, this is beautiful. You're meant to do that. And so it kind of unlocked this creative thing in me that I wanted to keep going with it. So when I started going with it and making more cakes, I would be shopping, I'd be going to Michael's or Hobby Lobby or the grocery store, and everything just looked like so mundane. It wasn't speaking to me. I'm the type of person who buys products kind of based on the packaging. Like I'll look at something and I'll go, that really speaks to me. That feels like it matches with my aesthetic. Now, pretty much every other aisle in every store, makeup, skincare, hair care, it's speaking to us. It's communicating. The packaging's communicating something, right? Like we're trendy, we're cool. You vibe with us.
Sure.
And I got none of that from the baking aisle. It was just like, this is all branded in 1990 and we haven't changed a thing. And a lot of it was confusing, you know, like they'll call something what it is, but as someone who's not a baker or is new to this space, I had no idea what to use it for.
So they were using their language, in other words, and just sort of functionality is what they were describing as
yeah, just kind of assuming that the consumer knew what to do with the product. And I thought, wow, there's a huge lack of education in this space. There's such a barrier to entry to get into it. And it's really intimidating. And so unless you want to spend a lot of time researching what Tylose powder or meringue powder is, it's very confusing. So that was one of the first issues that I noticed about the baking space, and let's just say the baking and decorating aisle. And then the sprinkles were just so ugly. It was like, you know, I'm making this artistic work of art that I've put so much effort into. Why do I want to put something cheap and mushy and gross on it to decorate it? It's like, no, you're just undressing it at that point. And so I thought, you know, there's got to be something better. So I started like looking online at like other countries, what they were selling. And I just so happened to be traveling to Europe at that time. And I was in Germany and I tasted some of their sprinkles. They were like little heart-shaped sprinkles and they were like shiny and pretty and crunchy and they tasted like powdered sugar. And I was like, okay, why can't we do this in America? So I started ordering stuff from different countries and like different, you know, individual ingredients like jimmies and pearls and heart shapes and like mixing them together. And I made some donuts and I put them on the donuts. And I had a friend who was also part of another company that was very successful. They actually just went public. They're a very successful company. And he was over at the house and he tasted the donuts and said, you should sell these. And I said, like the donuts? I don't want to have a bakery. I can't do that. I can't deal with brides and like moms. And he was like, no, the sprinkles, these are the best sprinkles I've ever had. I can't stop looking at them. They're so pretty. So that got my wheels turning, you know, and I started thinking, why aren't companies doing this already? Well, after a lot of research, I realized like, it's just one of the things that just hasn't been innovated on in so many years. And, you know, the companies that own, like all of the bigger companies that own a lot of the baking supplies, they just kind of keep doing the same thing. They haven't had many challengers or competitors. They haven't been forced to innovate, right? Like a company has to be forced to innovate pretty much if there's competition. So I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to start a decorating brand that is going to have great sprinkles. And eventually, like, we're going to start with that because that's what needs the most help. And it's the most user-friendly product, right? Everybody knows how to use sprinkles. And then we're going to branch out from there into other products. And so I started buying really small quantities from distributors, making my own sprinkle blends and giving them fun names and personalities. And we worked on our packaging and our branding and our messaging and our vibe. And then I started, you know, I made a social media account and I just started like spamming it. Like, you know, I learned how to make my own website. I didn't hire a single person. I started everything with my own capital. It only costed me about $2,000 to get started. Granted, I had my own computer and camera at the time, so I didn't have to spend money on equipment. It was basically just like, you know, Shopify fees and like some raw materials. And I started small. And, you know, I sent a bunch of cake decorators that I really liked online care packages and they all loved them and they just started posting about them for free. So I got a lot of organic marketing in the beginning. And so, you know, that's kind of how it happened.
So you gave us a ton there. I really do think that the stuff you said near the end was real good takeaway there, because you saw that the companies that you were buying from weren't innovating. They certainly weren't speaking to you. So you saw the opportunity to innovate, provide, and even if it was just a little, it was a lot, because no one had been doing anything. And then the way you talked about how you bootstrapped it, and, you know, the organic marketing and the care packages and the social media is like really, really, I think, instructive for a lot of people listening, because so many people think that, you know, in order for me to start a business, it's going to take all this money and all kinds of complexity, and you just kind of made it very simple. Now, I know the rest of the story probably isn't simple, because growing a business is not a simple endeavor, but you made it really simple there. So thank you for that. That was good. Real good.
Thank you.
So you mentioned, that this hobby, as it was when you first sort of started it, you started the business in 2016, but when did your how much time was involved in this experimentation that you were doing when you first chose it as a hobby, the decorating and that kind of thing?
5 months.
5 months. Okay. So you accelerated from this is kind of cool to this is something I want to really get into very quickly.
That's also just part of my personality. I go 0 to 60. When I want to do something, I do it. Like, I don't delay. I don't think about it too long. I'm an intuitive, so I rely on my intuition a lot. I'm very perceptive, and I kind of knew in my spirit, like, that this was something that I should be doing. I felt extremely connected to it. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, I'm going to start this business and make a ton of money. Like, wasn't even thinking about that. Right. Okay. I was just like, oh, maybe I'll make enough money to like contribute to my family and like take them on vacation or something. Like, it was not a money thing. It was purely like, I wanted to do this for myself and I enjoyed it. And I wanted to give other people the same products that I was enjoying and like get other people into this hobby because it was so fun. So it came from I think that's important. Like, it has to come from a good place. You should never start something like purely with the intent of money, because you're not going to speak to your customers.
Again, I agree with that. You can't, people who get into a business and think, well, I'm going to make X, that's my goal. I always think you're missing the whole boat here, because don't you think people can sense when you're in it for the money as opposed to when you're in it for, the passion of it or whatever? It's kind of, it makes itself known, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, those companies kind of sometimes, like, I know someone whose company folded for that very reason. It was like, it's just not sustainable because you can't care about it for the time that it takes to build it in order to make it valuable enough to sell.
Right.
It's really hard to put passion into that, especially if you're selling consumer products.
What are some of the other things in your life that you've gone 0 to 60 on? I thought that was a really interesting way to say.
Well, I'm very ADHD and I have OCD. I've got the whole gambit of mental health disorders. And so I talk about that all the time. I'm very open about it because I think it is really important that people talk about it and like destigmatize these things. And so for me, I tend to hyper focus on things, which is a symptom of ADD. And I'll get into hobbies. So last year I got really into indoor plants and I was on TikTok. I learn everything on YouTube and TikTok, by the way. I don't have a college degree. I literally am a sponge. When I'm interested in something, I am a sponge and I will learn everything there is to know about that topic in a very short amount of time. I retain things that I'm interested in. So that's also how I knew that I wanted to start this business, is because I was highly interested in it. So I got really into indoor plants last year. I learned everything there is to know about plants. And now I have like 50 indoor plants in my house as a jungle. So that's just one example. I just, I tend to be, I'm very hobby oriented.
And 0 to 6. So there's this test that you can do. It's called Kolbe, Kolbe, and it measures what it calls quick start. And I think you'd probably be a 10 on the quick start based on what I just heard there, because it's sort of the way that you're naturally inclined to react. And there's 4 different things, but quick start is one of them. It might be fun for you to take that assessment at some point to see kind of what you are, because it's not only helpful for you, but it's kind of helpful for the people around you too, because they understand, sort of what makes each of you tick naturally. And it's, anyway, sorry, a little aside.
Yeah, no, we did the Myers-Briggs personality assessment. We actually did it at our last offsite. We had someone come in who's like a expert in it and speak, and everybody figured out their Myers-Briggs personality so that we can understand each other better. And it makes so much sense. Like, oh, you know, Katie's an ENTJ, so that means she likes to think. So we need to give her a little bit more time. Like it makes such a huge difference. It's crazy.
That's fun. I'm an ENTJ as well. What are you?
I'm an ENIJ.
ENIJ.
I think that's the intuitive.
Okay.
Extrovert. What's the N stand for?
Now you're gonna test me. I'm not sure. I have to think about it, but maybe I'll
I
think
can't
about
remember.
it before the end of the podcast. So how have you used like Myers-Briggs? How have you used that in your company since the offsite? So because I always wonder about this. You do the, you know, you do the offsite, and you do an assessment like this, and you're like, yeah, that's who I am. Yeah, that's who you are. And then over time, you usually remember who you are, but you kind of forget who other people are. And I'm just wondering how you have, you know, progressed to using it in a positive or productive way in the company since then.
Well, the offsite was only like 2 weeks ago, so it's been very recent.
All right.
But
okay.
actually, just yesterday on a KPI call, our CEO said, "Does anyone have any questions?" And also, you know, for the whatever letter resembles the people who need, like, thinkers. I think it's the T's. They need a little bit more time to come up with a question. They need to think it over. You know, she said, "Does anyone have any questions?" Also, you know, for the people who want to think about it, the T's, you know, you can think about it in 30 minutes or so, ask your question. And so I was like, that's interesting. Like, we're kind of incorporating it into meetings. And I also thought it would be great to put on our Zoom names.
Yeah.
You know, so that when you're talking
idea.
to someone,
Right.
so you can know, okay, I shouldn't prompt this person to answer me now with a question, because that's not the way that their personality works. They need some time. They're not an intuitive, like, if you ask me a question intuitively, I'm going to be able to come up with it. But some people want to think about it and process it.
Yeah. That's really good on the Zoom. I hadn't thought about that. But when we had it done, it was pre-Zoom. And we posted it outside of everyone's office or on their cubicle wall, so that it was always a reminder. Because that's one of the things that always frustrated me about those tests, is that you get all this energy around doing them, and then, you know, it kind of dissipates over time because
it's like, how do you integrate it? You have to integrate it into, like, your culture, I think.
Yeah. And it's a good way for someone, when you're not communicating with them in a way that's appropriate for their style, to say, hey, remind, this is who I am. You know, can you? Yeah. So anyway, so has it going 0 to 60 ever got you into trouble? Like, because I wonder sometimes not every idea is a great idea, you know?
Yeah, I would say it's gotten me into trouble with going back to the plants, because once I lost interest in that, I had to then water 50 plants.
Oh.
And also, it was a very expensive hobby. So, like, plants are not cheap. So that was kind of like, oh, great. Now I have to keep these alive, like 6 months later when I'm over them. Now I have to keep them all, like, I'm over them in the sense of, like, more than just decor. And, like, I got over the whole, like, potting them. Like, I get really into hobbies, and then, like, 6 months later, I kind of phase out of it. So my bad habit is, like, spending too much money on a hobby and then getting over it. So it gets me in trouble.
Well, with the sprinkles, at least you've got 5 years into it, or 5+ maybe.
But a lot of that
making money.
A lot of people's jobs are like, I can't lose interest in that one. That's the one that I, like, have to maintain interest in. And I do, because it's so fun, and it's constantly innovating and changing. We always have a new product. And so that's really fun. That keeps me engaged.
You mentioned that you've got a CEO, and it made me think to ask you, was it never your intention to run the business, or was it something that you quickly discovered was not your unique ability, or was it just not a want? How did that come about, and when in the evolution of the company did the CEO come along?
I think that there's a lot of confusion with entrepreneurs and founders in general, especially now, because so many people are starting their own businesses. I think that there's a lot of confusion between a founder and a CEO and what the difference is. Okay. To me, if you want to have a successful company and you don't have any background in finance, leading board meetings, seeking investor money, you need a CEO. You know, like, I have no experience in that arena. I don't have an MBA. I've never run a business before, especially to this degree. Like I've done small little things, but not like this. So it was really important to me for the health and wealth of the business that we get a real CEO.
Okay.
That was one of the first things that I noticed about 2 years in. Like I noticed about a year and a half in that I was really like struggling with finances. Like I didn't even want to look at them. And so that's kind of when I was like, oof, I really wish we had someone here who like really knew finances and forecasting and all these things. And so I went from that very quickly, intuitively realizing that that was something I wanted. And so after I got our first investment in, I believe it was August or September 2018, that my first request was, we need to put out a search for a CEO. And they were like, well, I think you can do it a little bit longer. And I was like, I can't. I'm doing 80 jobs right now. I can't be the CEO. It's not long-term what's going to be good for us. And so we started that search. We've cycled through a couple of CEOs already.
Okay.
But yeah, we will always have that position. That will never be something that will like, I don't think we need a CEO anymore. But I recommend that to a lot of people, like not right off the bat, but like once you get to a certain point in growth, especially if you have investment. Me personally, I didn't feel comfortable taking on that investment and having it be my responsibility where that investment was going to be allocated, because I did not have the experience or the expertise to do that. And I did not want to fail.
Yeah.
So.
And what, so you mentioned that you've cycled through a couple. That's quick cycles, I guess, from 2018 to 2021. Can you give me some perspective on were you involved in the selection? And if so, where, you may have missed? I'm trying to get like a lesson out of this for people that are looking for a CEO.
I think it's not like a hard lesson that we learned. It was more just like when you're a company that's growing so fast, when we got our first CEO and I believe it was 2019, beginning of 2019, the company from that beginning of the year to the end of that year was basically a totally different company, right? Okay. Like a CEO has to have the ability to staff. They have to know who to hire next. That's something I was really bad at, was figuring out who we need to hire next. Like, in the direct to consumer world, there are so many types of jobs. There's like head of growth, chief revenue officer, blah, 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 like stuff that I didn't even know existed. So how am I going to select someone when I don't even understand the job description? Yeah. So that was another reason I was like, we need a CEO. And so I think it's more just a thing where we were just trying to find the right fit. You know what I mean? And each CEO we had brought us to a different level, but then it became a thing of like, well, this person is not really like either they didn't want to move forward or we didn't want to move forward because the business like plan had changed, right? So it's kind of like, it was never like a bad thing. It was always just like a constant moving learning experience.
Okay.
So I guess for us, it's a little different. If you're a company that's very well established, you can spend a ton of money on whatever CEO you want. But when you're just getting started, the company was only 2.5 years old at that point, right? So like, we didn't want to hire a CEO that we would have to pay a fortune to because we just couldn't afford it, right? So we had to start with someone who was like a little lower, maybe had never been a CEO before. Yeah. So okay. It's more of a thing where you're just like cycling and working your way up versus coming out of the gate, hiring someone who's like driving a Ferrari and metaphorically speaking, is used to driving Ferraris, and then they come down to drive a Kia. It just doesn't really work because a lot of what they know is too high level for where you're at. So it's kind of the thing of like finding the right match at the right time and then progressing from there. And if the person is like, you can outgrow people, and with a company that's scaling so rapidly, like you're gonna outgrow people. It's just something that's gonna happen. In not just CEO, like every level.
Yeah, for sure. And those are a couple of really key things that you brought up. First, you can't afford to hire an established CEO, and it's probably not even the best thing for a company that's in the early stage, because not only are they used to getting a certain paycheck and stuff like that, but they're also used to having people do stuff for them, right? So it's kind of like
big time.
Yeah, it's kind of like, oh, I forgot what it was like. Even if they were the founder at one time of a business, it's still like, oh, I forgot about all that stuff, And yeah, probably natural to bring someone in who's maybe not really qualified to be CEO, but they have, the drive, the passion, culturally they're a fit, and they have at least some of what you're looking at to get to the next stage.
Yeah, I think it's important to say, okay, we need a CEO right now, especially if you don't have one and maybe you've just taken funding, or you don't have funding, but you want to get funding. Well, now you're going to be looking for a CEO who has a background in getting funding, right? So that's going to be something that you're going to want. Whereas, and you might say, okay, so for this year or this 2 years, we're planning on keeping this CEO or this other employee to get us to this level. And once we're at this level, then we're going to be looking for someone with completely different qualities, someone who's maybe more trained in another area that we weren't thinking about 2 years ago.
Okay.
So it has to be a fluid thing. I think, when you get closer to an acquisition, it's really important to have like particular talent on your team. But when you're so young and growing in the business, you shouldn't be saying, okay, we're only making this much money. It doesn't make sense to go and hire someone who's going to cost you a really large salary, especially when there was other hires that you need to make. Like we had to make a lot of hard choices, like we had other hires that we needed to make to keep the business running. And so we couldn't afford to just go and, pay a lot of money for a CEO at that point.
So it
still helped tremendously.
Yeah. Okay. So none of them were like complete duds, you're saying? They all made it.
They all got us to a certain level where we wanted to be.
Right.
And then, one of them was just wanted to retire. So that there was no, you know what I mean? Like it was working out well. The timing didn't line up. But where we are now is just so great because our CEO right now, she's also on our board, and she is the reason that this company got funding. She believed in this company more than anyone, like same level as me. And she's been around for so long, since the beginning. She understands the business so well. Like it's so hard when you bring in a CEO or a high level employee and they have to like learn the business and they're just like drinking from a fire hose. It takes a long time to onboard someone. But what I loved about bringing on, her name is Kylie, it just worked out so naturally, like the flow. And it's just been like amazing.
That's another thing, that you bring in the right person, then all of a sudden, all of these things that you imagined were possible sort of begin to become possible where before they were maybe frustrating because.
Yeah.
So,
and like COVID really was a huge issue for the last 2 years, just with morale and employees and sales, and just, it just was so nuts the last couple of years, just nuts. That's the best way to sum it up. And I think a lot of people feel that way.
So let me ask you one more question about sort of the finance growth side of the business. Then I want to get into the actual products, and then a little bit more about you, so I can understand sort of where you came from to get here. But you mentioned taking on investments. So it started pretty much as a hobby, became, a really big hobby, something more, became real, business. And then, you started growing quickly, and you mentioned taking on an investor. Can you help me understand when sort of the switch happened for you? Because I'm thinking, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking at the beginning, you may not have been thinking this is going to be a huge business. You may have been thinking this is a real, this is like a real neat project for me to see if I can disrupt this and I can create something that hasn't been out there that people actually want. So tell me what's changed about your thinking, I guess, because when you take on an investor, you're giving up equity in the company, you're definitely, expectations go up, and there's real, line of sight to a big company.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, something that I kind of learned and it really resonated with me early on was that a lot of founders put a lot of emphasis on equity. And I always say, would you rather have 10% of a company that's worth $100 million or 60% of a company that's worth $20 million or $10 million? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
for me, I was trading equity for success of the company long term. Like I'm betting on me. Every day I'm hedging my bets on me and my company. And if I don't believe in it and I don't think that we can get there, then like, what am I doing? Right? Like holding on to my equity that's worthless, so it's just kind of like, do you want to grow your business or not? Like, where do you see, like, do you have a number in mind that you want to get to the business to valuation wise? Do you have a number that you want to walk away with? Like, I think these are important things to think about. When I talked to my investor, those were the first things he asked me. It was like, how much money do you want to walk away with? And I was like, I haven't thought about it. You know what I mean? And so,
Sure.
Okay, well, if you want to walk away with this amount of money, then we need to get to this X amount of revenue, which means this valuation in this year, hopefully. So, and then that's what you start working towards. Like, if you don't have a goal that you're working towards, then like, there's no way to measure your success really. So that was really important to me. The first thing is like, know what you want, and also like know what you want in an investor. Like, are you just going there to get money? Do you need money? Do you need help with the business? Do you want other input? Like for me in that first year of business, because it took off and like blew up and I was doing everything. I was like customer service, order packaging. I had like one other girl helping me at that point who had hired to help me package orders. I mean, I was doing everything, social media, like back end website. I was like mildly like coding at that point. And so I was so exhausted. I didn't even know who to hire to help me. Right. This was my first venture in direct to consumer. And so for me, I didn't have to go looking for money. It kind of came to me, which was, I understand that doesn't happen for everybody. But for me, I was very, I don't want to say lucky, but the universe lined it up for me because I believe in all of that like stuff. And
was it from the guy who liked the sprinkles on the donuts and that made a connection?
It was from their investor.
Okay.
So,
all right.
So it's a private equity firm, and the chairman, someone told this guy who ate the donuts, told Kylie, who is now our CEO,
okay,
hey, have you seen Fancy Sprinkles? And she's like, no. And he was like, look at this. And she was like, oh my God, this looks so fun. Like, how much money is she making? And he told her, and she was like, does she want to meet with me? And I was like, yeah. And so we sat down and we had sushi and we just hit it off. We're the same age, we're both moms. We're so similar. And she just loved the business. She loved my story. And she was like, I want you to meet who is now my partner. And when we met, we just like hit it off, talked for hours. And, he doesn't invest in that many businesses. Like a lot of businesses want him to invest, but he doesn't. So I felt really special that I was like one of 1,000 businesses chosen, because when he does invest, like he goes hard and is really committed to it. And so that was really exciting for me because it was validation that not only did I believe in this, but other people saw my vision and they saw, it wasn't like super transactional. It felt very involved. So I've heard from a lot of friends and colleagues that a lot of times when you go with like venture capital, it can be very transactional, and there's a lot of hard lines in the sand and a lot of hard numbers. And it's just kind of like a very money transaction. This felt very much beyond that. It was like, okay, helping me decide who are we going to hire next? What resources do we need? Now I have their resources, right? Because there's an incubator program under the private equity firm with all these resources that you can pay for fractionally so that you don't have to go out and hire a full-time data researcher. You can use theirs for 20% of his time and pay a fraction of what you would pay someone full-time, because we just didn't need full-time data researchers. I didn't need a full-time, growth specialist. So it worked out really nicely. And it also opened up a lot of opportunities and relationships to the business. So that's why I chose to go with them, because it wasn't about the money. We had money that first year. We made a lot of money. And so I was sitting on a ton of money and I was like, I don't know where to put this next. I need a specialist to come in and help me so that I don't waste it. So that was the whole point of, getting that first round of investment. Like, let's add some more capital to this and then decide where we're going to put it to grow this business.
Okay.
So for me, it was like, that's kind of the transition from the first year into that investment period of the second year.
And would it be appropriate to share the name of the private equity firm for the show notes, or?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's fine. It's Sterling Partners in Chicago.
Oh, okay.
My business partner is 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗢𝗪.
Thank you.
Yeah, just check with the PR firm that's okay. I'm pretty sure it's fine. I mean, we did like a business wire. There was like press and business wire about it when it happened. So it's public knowledge, I think.
Okay. I'll double check. I'll look it up and just to make sure. But when you were answering, thank you for all that information, by the way. One thing that you said in there I thought was really important. Well, a lot of it was important, but one thing you said was really important. And that is know what you want. I was just coaching a CEO yesterday who was looking at being acquired, and it's, you get a letter of intent, and it's amazing how many people get a letter of intent and they sort of get a little excited about it, but they don't take the time to actually think about what they want out of this. And when you go into something not having thought about what you want, you sometimes set yourself up for disappointment, because you think, I don't know if this ever happened to you, but you kind of think that the person you're talking to, because you're getting along and you're having a good conversation, is thinking the same thoughts that you're thinking. And oftentimes they're not,
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to something like that, it can lead to disappointment. When you were answering the how did it happen question, you described your adventure into sprinkles and other things now as edible art. And when you said that, I thought, I wonder what that means. Because I was thinking not food, but when you say edible art, are you describing food as art? And because I got the sense that when you were talking about the old school sprinkles and baking stuff, they were sort of looking as food. Or is it something else that I'm missing?
No, it's just that. It's like food as art. So we sell sprinkles as well as edible glitter. We sell kits so that you can make your own like 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗢𝗪s and cake pops. And, we sell tools to decorate cakes. And, we have fancy sugars. Like, we have a whole cocktail audience. It's not just edibles, like also drinkable. So we have a whole customer base that just buys sugars, like colored, like we sell beautiful glittery sugars, and they rim their cocktail glasses with them. They put the edible glitter in their drinks. That's like a whole other customer that we've acquired. So so it's not just baking. So that's why we say edible art, because it's not just for bakers or people who like to make. It's also for entertainers who just, they want to bring, it's called prism powder. That's our edible glitter. They want to bring that and put it in their purse. And like when they're out at a bar, put it in their drink. And it's just so glittery and gorgeous, and you can drink it. It's edible. And so just like fun stuff, So
yeah,
it's just kind of like making things that you can eat pretty.
And the glitter doesn't change the taste of anything. It just
nothing.
makes it,
no
it just
taste.
Makes it your own.
It has no texture. It's like miracle powder. It's really? So glittery. Yes. And we have like every color under the sun. It's, that when we launched that product, it was like a whole new world.
And where'd you
That was very exciting. Well, because in the baking world, there's something called disco dust. And it's actually plastic. So it's not edible. And it says it on the jar, like, don't eat this. It's for decoration only. Like if you're going to decorate like a topping that no one's going to eat on the cake, but people like started eating it. And so there was this whole thing on Instagram where a lot of bakers didn't know disco dust wasn't edible. So we kind of, again, stepping in with that education piece, like educating consumers, like you cannot eat this. Our product, like that we've worked on and done a lot of R&D on, this is edible. The FDA says it's edible. You can eat it. Spread the word. And it looks prettier than that other stuff. And so once we really put the knowledge out there and stood behind that, not only did the bakers like transition over to prism powder, but now we're putting it in cocktails and champagne. So now we have like so many different ad groups. We've got bakers, entertainers, cocktail enthusiasts, like all these different sections. But they all have the same thing in common. They like pretty things. So I have a theory that, you know, people who subscribe to makeup, skincare, fashion also are probably the type of people who want glitter in their champagne.
Right.
Right. So like target those customers.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this like all enveloping. It's like, you know, we're not just simple. Humans are multifaceted. We have so many different interests, but if you look at someone's interests and how they all tie together, you can kind of get an accurate picture of like what they might like. I think that's fair to say. So that's kind of where we steer our ship in terms of product.
Well, I am definitely going to have to get some prism powder because that way
it's so fun.
Something, yeah, it could be something that you can only get if you come to our house. You know?
Yes, exactly.
Thing, right?
It's such a wow thing. Like when people see it for the first time, they're just like, holy cow. Like, can I drink this? Is this actually drinkable? And then they taste it and they're like, wait, it's like not gritty. There's nothing. It just tastes like nothing. And I'm like, I know, that's the magic of it.
Right.
So.
And you mentioned a couple of times D2C. So are you only selling e-commerce? Is that the only way to or are you trying to get into stores as well?
Mostly, yes. Retail was not our first. I don't want to half-ass anything, right? I'm the type of person, like, I'm not going to buy something unless I understand exactly what I'm getting. I'm not going to pay for a service unless I know exactly what it's going to get me and I have a clear path of how this is going to benefit us. Same goes with any type of new business venture. Like, I'm not going to throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks. Like, we need to have a serious plan that is super outlined and in our best interest, right? Because every retailer under the sun has come to us. You name them. I've never reached out to a single retailer. Okay. Everyone has reached out to us over the last 4+ years. And we've always said no, because I want to hold up the integrity of the brand. I don't want to go to cheaper prices. I don't want to compromise our quality to make it fit with them. So we've just been really thoughtful about it. And our goal was always to grow our D2C presence first and establish that before we got into retail, because it's a lot harder to start with retail and then go D2C, because it's like, man, we've got, you know, it's literally like trying to turn a cruise ship around.
Right.
It's like,
yeah. Nobody knows who you are. You know, it's like all kinds of.
I know. So it's like we built this whole organic following and this brand loyalty and this community, and as well as our D2C hires, which are totally difficult, like way more difficult to hire than anyone who's done retail, because retail's been around longer, right? So there's a lot of people who have specialized in retail for decades. D2C, not so much. So it's really hard because it's a newer ball game, right? So you have to basically, we've staffed out the D2C, still staffing it out. And then hopefully in the next year or so, I can't say, but we do have plans to have a retail model. But that's all I can say about it.
Okay, fair enough. And are you, what about manufacturing? I'm assuming that you're using contract manufacturers at the moment to make your product. Is that?
We do.
Okay.
We have so many different products though. It's the thing, like even our sprinkles, like one jar of sprinkles has up to 16 different types of sprinkles, and probably like, I would say the ratio is like 1/3. Like if you split it in thirds, like everything in the bottle probably comes from 3 or 4 manufacturers. Like, so we get all of our raw individual ingredients and colors, and we built out a food processing system in our warehouse where it's essentially like a giant kitchen with no ovens or stoves. And that's where we process. Like, I go in and I say, okay, we need a red sprinkle blend. So I'll make the sprinkle blend, and then mathematically we'll transition it to like a large recipe. And then all of our people like blend them together in huge batches, and then we fill them in our filling machines. And so it's literally like we're getting the raw materials somewhere else and we're blending them ourselves. Now our product that's already like ready to go, those are all from different manufacturers.
Okay. Yeah, really smart. So you're really controlling the IP on the recipe, right? Because
that's why no one else can do what we do, because you have to give up a lot of quality. Like, if you're just going to go to China and say, make me a sprinkle blend that looks like mermaid, it's not going to be curated. It's not going to be that pretty. It's going to be like not great. And that's why people love us, is because everything is so curated and has such a personality. It's like not generic in any way, shape, or form. And there's customers that they appreciate that.
Yeah. Okay. So if you don't mind, let's back up a little bit, and I'd like to know how you became who you are. Like, how we sort of got from 2016 on. What about, how did you become who you are?
Well, I'm from Louisiana. Mm-hmm. So I actually grew up on the bayou. My parents literally have a bayou in their backyard.
Okay.
And my whole family is like in the medical industry. My dad's a pharmacist. All my sisters are pharmacists. And I basically grew up playing a ton of sports, big tomboy, but also very girly. So whenever I decided to go to college, I went to pre-med. I was going to be a pharmacist and follow in the family footsteps. And after like a year, I was really unhappy there. I was in North Louisiana in Monroe, where they filmed Duck Dynasty. So it's like, as you can imagine, it's like the worst town ever. It's so boring there. There's nothing to do. And I just always felt like I was meant for a greater purpose. Call it instinct, call it intuition. I just felt like cosmically connected to something that was not there. And so I moved to Baton Rouge in hopes of being in a better town, went to a different college. And after about a year there, I was really bored again. I made really good grades. I've always been pretty academic, but I was just not fulfilled. I was like, I don't want to be here. Like, I don't want to be doing this. I don't want to just like get a job and go to work and get married and have kids. And so I decided to move to LA. And when I came to LA, I started modeling, and I had a really successful career there. And yeah, it was really nice because I got to just finally break out of the whole like academia, sports. And it was like, for the first time in my life, I felt really free to explore who I was and like what my true interests were versus like, what does everyone in this town just do? And so, you know, I met new people. I was, you know, involved in learning about different cultures, you know, like where I'm from, everyone is the same religion. Everyone's, you know what I mean? So it was such an exploratory thing for me to be able to just like learn and soak things up and learn about things that I like to wear and fashion. And I traveled a ton. And so that's kind of like where I really learned about myself and who I was. So yeah, but I've always been interested in curating, like for as long as I can remember. I've loved like anything having to do with design. Like I love interior design, decorating. Like sometimes I just go buy flowers and like arrange them in a certain way. Like that's just how my brain works. So it's and then my whole family is like entrepreneurs. Like my dad has owned pharmacies since as long as I can remember. And when I was a kid, I worked at his pharmacies, you know what I mean? Like I was the cashier. And so like, I learned a lot about business and, you know, it always made more sense to me to own my own business. Cause like, that's what I had seen modeled. And so it just took me a while to figure out what that business needed to be.
Okay. And when you moved to LA, was it just sort of the classic, pack up the car and drive? And did you have a place? Did you have friends there? Did you have a place?
Yeah, no. Well, I had a boyfriend at the time that I was dating in Louisiana, but he lived in LA. So I went to visit with him. I went to visit his family over Thanksgiving. And when I went there, I was scouted by a modeling agency and they were like, just go on a casting. And I went and I booked it and I made like $2,000. And I was like, I'm rich, guys. Like, sorry, this is the most money I've ever seen in my life. Like I was looking at a check for $2,000 and I was like, that was so easy. I just like smiled. And then they were like, okay, let's send you out on a commercial. And I booked the commercial and I got like 40 grand literally within the first like 2 weeks of being there. And I was like, Mom, Dad, sorry, but I'm quitting school. I'm richer than you now. And so basically you can't even imagine being like 20 years old. It was nuts. And so I was really lucky. I never had to have a job like waiting tables. Like I got an apartment, sent my car out, and my parents were like, okay, like if you're happy, the school agreed to let me go on like a year hiatus and come back and still have my scholarship. So I did that and I had just such a fantastic time. I mean, I was just bopping around, living the life, clubbing, just working, modeling, and getting paid so well. And it was just like such an incredible experience to go from like schoolwork in Louisiana to now it's like, living the life in LA. I don't live that life anymore. I can tell you, I have 3 kids and it's not as glamorous as it looks on the internet, but I managed to just I think the most important thing was just like meeting a lot of people, you know what I mean? And like understanding how different people grew up and like what other people were interested in. And like I said, like you just kind of have to be a sponge. Like I've always loved to learn. That's always been really important to me. But long story short, I did not go back to Louisiana and finish and get my degree.
I had a feeling that's where that was going to go. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, sorry guys, I'm not coming back. Like I'm good.
Before you'd moved to LA, had modeling been something that you considered or was
part
of your life? So it was a brand new thing when you got there?
It was. Apparently it's all about how you look. So I was like, all right. Yeah, they were like, you're tall. I had short brown hair. And at the time, like nobody had short hair really. And so I looked different. And so I just booked a lot of jobs kind of based on that look at the time. This was a long time ago, like 15 years ago. So yeah, it just, like I said, I really believe in the universe and I believe in like cosmic paths, and like intuitively it felt like the right decision, and like it led me to that, which led me to this, and like it's all, you just got to trust your gut. And like my gut told me that it was the right decision to make, just like my gut told me that this business was the decision that I needed to make. Nice. So,
and I saw somewhere that you were in Green Day videos, right? So that you're sort of known for being in Green Day videos. So I wanted to ask you about that because they're I don't know if you like them as a band or not, but they're like my favorite band. I listen to them almost all day long in my headphones. Just really. Are
you serious?
Just really quietly, just over and over and over again on all the stuff I have on my phone.
I mean, I'm not a fan, but like I'm not really like a rock fan at all. Okay. So, but yeah, I did like 3 Green Day videos. I did a ton of commercials. Like if you saw a commercial between like 2016 and 2018. No, sorry. Oh my God, I got my decades mixed up. If you saw a commercial between 2006 and 2008 or 2009, I was in like every commercial. It was wild. And that was at the time whenever they were paying, like everything was union, like national. So you just get royalties off of everything. Like every day it was just like a stack of checks. And so they don't pay that way. They don't pay that well anymore. I've heard from friends, but the media landscape has changed, which also has affected businesses massively. Like back then there was only TV commercials. Like we didn't have YouTube ads, Instagram ads, Facebook ads, all these things. So you also have to be really nimble in sort of navigating the media landscape, because boy, is it changing like month to month.
And do you miss that? Or is this, I guess,
no,
that's a dumb question if you miss it, but what, your business has got you very excited. I can tell, just from talking to you.
Mhm.
Were you equally as excited doing that work, or was it
No,
just okay? And it was never your
no,
own, right? It was just
it was never my own. And
Yeah.
also back then, like modeling was so much more sketchy than it is now. Like
Okay.
there was no there like iPhone, like social media didn't exist. So like I encountered a lot of really sketchy situations where I was not comfortable. I did not feel safe, and like no one ever knew about it. Right. It's like, so now people have to be accountable for their behavior towards women. And back then it wasn't that way. So no, I don't miss it, because also I was, I don't want to offend anyone who's like in their early 20s, but like I was a little girl. You know what I mean? Like still mentally. I didn't have my family out here to protect me. And so I don't miss that at all, because also it was very, there's a lot of rejection in that arena. So you have to have, I think that's the reason I developed really thick skin, is because you just get so used to rejection. Like it's really hard to offend me. I was used to people just being like, oh no, you're too short, or we don't like your jawline, or your ears are not right for this. Like literally the craziest stuff. So you just get used to it. And you like learn how to not take it personally. So I think that is probably like my one big good takeaway, other than success financially. I learned how to like have thick skin.
That's a fantastic takeaway, Lisa, because I just wrote something about this, that being offended is a personal choice. It's not, no one can really offend you unless you decide to be offended. It's like, it's impossible, because it's someone else saying something that has nothing to do with what you decide to believe about yourself.
Exactly. I think also we're taught that like we should be offended by certain things. Yeah. But if you look at it from the lens of like, did that person mean to be offensive? That's a totally different question. If someone purposefully is trying to offend you, well, that's an insult. Someone's insulting you intentionally. That's a different story than like someone didn't mean to offend you. Right. You just got to give people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, good clarification. Well, Lisa Stelly, this has been so much fun getting to know you and talking about all these different things. Congratulations on your success, and Fancy Sprinkles sounds like it's going to be everywhere. It's definitely going to be in my house because I am going to check out some of the products.
Yeah,
because I want to be.
Should try some.
I want to be pretty.
Yes, they're great on ice cream. Our sprinkles are so good on ice cream. You'll never be able to eat like regular sprinkles again.
Is there any other way you want any people to connect with you? I gave your Instagram and your website at the beginning. Is there?
Yeah, I mean, my personal Instagram is at Lisa Stelly. But we have Fancy Sprinkles Instagram, and which is really fun. It's like a rabbit hole of addiction to go down. It's just so fun to watch.
Lisa, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I really enjoyed
this. You too. Thank you so much, Mike. Have a good one.
You too.
Podcast is brought to you by WINJECT Studios. We are an all-in-one educational platform for podcasters that revolutionizes how hosts leverage content to increase engagement with listeners, downloads, and income. We come together to focus on community, collaboration, and collective impact. For more information on how you can interact directly with our hosts, access exclusive live content with offers you can't get anywhere else from our official partners, join our purpose-driven community by visiting www.winject.com. If you're ready to build a career doing what you love, then we're ready to see you there.